Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of SpeakEasy with Eric and Cory. A lot has changed since our last episode. I think most notably, we've had tons of wildfires, power outages. Also, Trump has been president for 2 years, 2 months, 2 weeks, whatever it's been. It seems like an eternity. So a lot has transpired. So our last episode was outages and chaos. And look, candidly, in our industry, this has been a nice shot in the arm. Having our backup capabilities, whether it's batteries or generators, show some value. And people are really seeing that utility companies are going to shut power off. And we've seen just a whole flood of people looking for solutions. So that's been really nice.
I've been on the road a lot, talking to a lot of customers and helping a lot of people with backup solutions. It's funny, we're experts in backup solutions because it's our pedigree, and it's only now that people value it. But we've been doing this right. We've been doing this for a long time. This technology has always been available, but now it's urgency. Everybody wants generators and batteries and all the things that we offer, and it is interesting to weather this storm and see how it is working out.
Right, and the other thing I mentioned, just Trump. Right, we're not going to sit here and speak poorly or negatively of a side. We're just going to speak truthfully. Just the effect of Trump being in office. There's a lot of changes, and specifically changes to how money's being spent in the country, whether that's subsidies, tax credits, things that affect us. So this episode is somewhat centered on how much is solar affected by Trump being president. And also I want to talk just about solar has traditionally, right, like always had tailwinds, meaning now is the best time to go solar. However, for the last 2 years, I think there's been this state of paralysis, like, why would I go solar right now? It doesn't seem like a good time. I think we're entering another time period where it makes a lot of sense to go solar again. So, we'll go through that. Cool. That's the intent today. So let's, I guess I'll give you a little bit of a preview. So here's the 4 things I want to talk about. I think the 4 reasons why it makes sense to go solar right now are: 1, the cost of products are going up. 2, the cost of financing is going up, which I think might be a surprise to some people because they see cuts in the Fed rate, right? Number 3, subsidies, right? That's tax credits and things that make solar more affordable. Those are in question. Those might get modified under the new presidential administration. And lastly, utility rates, right? There's very forecasted and documented rate increases that are happening. So those 4 things are what I want to focus on, and I'll try to highlight how Trump affects those, or what might be the effect of somebody new looking at this and putting their signature on it.
Great.
Ready to get started?
Yes.
All right. So product price increases. That's probably the easiest one to talk about. So 2 things here, right? The most obvious one that Trump has been putting, not just in the renewable energy space, but just everywhere, right, is tariffs. It's something he believes very strongly in, right? Let's keep things domestic, meaning if we buy stuff from out of the country, there's going to be tariffs on it, making it more expensive to bring those goods in. So solar is not immune to that. It's very much something that we've experienced anyways. This is pre-Trump. There is tariffs on certain components within the solar industry. We've always dealt with it. Right. So there's that component. And then the second is the solar industry has been reeling now for 2 years, meaning we haven't had the same output. We haven't had the same amount of solar being deployed over the last 2 years. So manufacturers have taken that loss. They have weathered that storm. They can't any longer. So at some point, the people that are going to survive in this industry, they have to raise prices to survive. They have to make money. They can't just keep subsidizing the loss, right? So that's part number 1. I mean, what is your take on, I guess, generally tariffs? Do you have an opinion on how that lands in our industry?
Yeah, I mean, everybody loves the idea of tariffs. I love the idea of encouraging manufacturing in the United States. But the effect on that, or the rapid transition to a tariff world, can be problematic for industries. So the majority of solar modules are made overseas. So tariffs on that are already they're going to depress an already depressed market, right. The solar market. Makes things more difficult in our industry, but does it need to be done? Should we move towards manufacturing in the United States for solar cells? I think so.
Who would argue that for not just solar, but anything, right? Like, I think American manufacturing should be supported. So I think we all support this, but we should also recognize this will increase the cost. It's just like
with anything else in politics. It's hard to say that is the right way to do this. You're doing it too fast. You're doing it too slow. It's gonna hurt. Like, what's the right way? And I worry that it's not going to be the right way. But we're in it. Let's do it. Let's get past it.
Tariffs are reality. They have been in this industry specifically, and now under this new administration, they're going to be even more hard pressed. So I think we should just expect that this is a reality, and we should lean into it. But it will ultimately, in 2025 and beyond, increase the cost of materials, right? That's a fair assumption.
Absolutely.
And the other point I was making is these manufacturers, right? Like, they have lowered prices over the last 5 years. They have hit a bottom, and I believe they're coming back up. So if we just look at a couple examples, right? Like, one of the largest players in the entire solar industry is LONGi. And they are, most people might recognize them as a panel manufacturer, but they're actually a cell manufacturer that supplies the cells for most of the industry. I believe they're like an $18 billion company, which is very large in the solar space. With a B, not an M, right? So very large in this space. And last year they lost over $1 billion, right? Traditionally they make $1 to $3 billion a year. So that's a huge reversal for a company like that, especially one that's kind of like a barometer for how is the industry doing.
So just to be clear, losing $1 billion, bad. That's a bad thing.
Okay. Bad, yeah. Okay. Not Facebook, the opposite of.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That was a terrible reference to that movie, The Social Network, but yeah. What else? So what's another really recognizable name in the solar manufacturing space? SolarEdge, right? Number two, top two inverter manufacturer. There's really only a couple players in that space, and they lost. Now that there's a little bit of a skewed data here, but in Q3 alone, 1 quarter of last year, they lost $1.2 billion.
How does something like that even happen?
So again, I said it's a little bit misleading. I think they had something in the range of like $260 million in revenue. So how do you lose $1.2 billion if you only do $260 million top line? The answer is they had to devalue some of their assets. So assets on the book had to be recognized as further losses than they were reporting. So in reality, it probably wasn't a $1.2 billion loss. It was more like a $200 million loss. But the point is, this industry, from the perspective of manufacturers, is reeling. They are losing money, and companies don't continue doing what they're doing if they don't make money. So something has to change. So whether it's the tariffs or it's companies needing to make money, we're going to see price increases. We've already had these conversations with the manufacturers that we use. Price increases are coming. So that has not been the case. I can't even remember the last time we've had a price increase, a meaningful one from a manufacturer. It's been at least, I want to say 3 years, 4 years. It's been a long time since our prices have gone up. They've been going down. So this is a reversal.
I think that we talk a lot about the industry and its turbulence, and this feels to me like a reset. Maybe some of these companies don't, I want to say deserve, but like shouldn't
consolidation.
Yeah, consolidation of the market. Is that where we're at? Are some of these people not going to be involved in the future of renewable energy?
I feel like this consolidation has been well underway for 5 years, 5+ years. But yeah, I think there's more to happen. So not everyone's going to make it through this, right? But that might even be further reason why the manufacturers that make it are going to increase their prices and become sustainable long term.
Let's decide to be profitable all of a sudden.
Right. Would you keep doing what we're doing long term if we kept losing money?
Negative.
Not 1.2 billion, but on our scale, right? Like it would be really hard to every year keep doing this. So yeah, I think we can move on to the next point, but material costs are going up, and that has not happened for a very long time.
No doubt. Yeah. Materials are going to go up. Volume is down for solar, which is a point in itself to increase prices, but the manufacturers not being able to play the volume game anymore is going to put a lot of them out of business.
The second point, like I said, I think in the introduction, is more surprising, right? Because the average person, finances are a very just topic that I feel like people aren't super in tune too. So, I try to stay plugged into this stuff with our business. And, most people think of, what's the most obvious indication of rates, right? It's very public when the Fed cuts the rate, right? And we know over the last year, I think I covered this in the last episode or two, that it's been down a point over like the last 12 months.
So interest rates going down across the board then?
From the Fed. No, from the Fed, it's down a point.
What?
Right? But that's not the only story.
Okay.
Right? That's a Fed cut. Now, mortgage rates, right, is something that people are probably way more in tune with. Like, where are mortgage rates?
Totally.
I think I checked these last night, and they're like just below 7%. They're like 6.75 to 6.9%.
Wow. Okay.
Still very high, right? And
let's go buy a house.
And rising, right? Going the opposite direction.
Okay.
Why is that? Right? Look, that doesn't make sense to people, right? And same in the consumer lending space. We actually just got a price increase for the first time in several years from a solar financing lender. Why is that? Right? Because we're competing for investors. What are they investing in, right? And if you're going to invest in whether it's a mortgage or some other space where consumer lending is involved, there is long-term treasury notes, right? This is basically the government, U.S. government borrowing money. So that 10-year note or longer is competing directly with mortgages. So as much as the Fed has been cutting, the long-term bonds have been going up, right? Which doesn't make a ton of sense to people. Like, why would that happen, right?
So these bonds and these mortgage rates are riding the same wave up.
Well, they're competing. So people are looking at like, do investors want to invest in these mortgages, right? These 30-year mortgages at 6.9%, right? Because ultimately that's what happens, right? When you get a mortgage, they get packaged and resold to investors. And the same thing with like bonds, right? That's traditionally a more safe avenue. I think bonds right now in the 10-year market are like 4.5%. So do I want to make 4.5% for 10 years or 6.9 for 30 years? Like this is what's creating this dynamic.
Yikes.
So it's very interesting that the Fed's cutting rates, but yet the outlook is still, I think inflation's going to continue to rise. So I think that's what's driving this is the long-term outlook is still that we haven't tackled and solved inflation. So what does that mean for the solar space? It means that this year, I believe rates will see an uptick. I think a lot of people are thinking it's going to go down, and I don't believe that to be the case anymore. Might we receive another quarter point down on the Fed? Maybe, but I'm not convinced that is going to land as far as consumer lending. Yeah, I don't think it will. So if people are looking at rates right now to borrow and they're like, yeah, my electric bill's a problem, but I don't like the rate over here for borrowing money at making up a rate, 6% or whatever, don't bank on that going down. Right.
Well, does that necessarily matter? Like if you're financing a solar system at a rate you don't like, air quotes, if the payment is better than the utility company.
Right. And I think that's where people get lost, right? It's this consumer mentality, right? The mortgage rate is the easiest way to display that. People are remembering that mortgage rates used to be in the 2s and 3s, and they can't get over the fact that they're in the 6s. There was a long time that mortgage rates were, above 10%. Like they only recently, for a small period of time, came down below 5%. So we have short-term, bias and memory, but in reality, like this might just be more the indication of where we're going to be. We might never go back to 2.5-3% borrowing of money.
This is the new norm.
This is the new norm. And if we're speaking about it candidly, right, like a higher interest rate generally indicates a healthy market. It's an economy that's doing well, right? You lower interest rates when you're trying to stimulate an economy. So it's not even necessarily a bad thing. But I do think it's something that people need to recognize that consumer lending rates, not just in the solar space, across the board, will probably go up in 2025. So sorry to burst everyone's bubble. If you're trying to get cheap money, it's not coming back this year.
We'll see how long it takes the market in general to accept this new reality. But I think you're right. I think that we're in it for the long haul at higher interest rates than the 2.875 mortgage rate that everybody was excited about in 2020.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Next topic, and this is probably the one that I think is the most impacted by a new administration. So this is the subsidies within the industry. So we have a tax credit, right, of 30%, and I believe it expires in 2032 or 2033. So we've got a lot of runway left, right? So that's the main driver, right? If you have a $30,000 solar system, you're getting, $9,000 off of that. That's a huge subsidy. And I'm not saying that the new administration will definitely change that, but it has certainly been part of their agenda to talk about like unnecessary spending. Like, we're putting money in all these different areas. Does it make sense? Right. I think the focus is on how do we lower tax rates to the average American. Part of that is by unraveling some things that we spend money on. So solar tax credits do fall into that. Right. The Inflation Reduction Act is largely under fire, under scrutiny. And there's aspects of that which I think will be 100%. Parts of that will be modified. Do I think that solar is one of them? I'm not sure. But I think pretty clearly there are aspects like whether it's wind or the electric vehicle tax credit, those will change. Solar is a little bit up in the air, but like, I don't feel comfortable if someone asked me, do you think the solar tax credit will remain unchanged under Trump? I don't feel comfortable saying that. So I do think for the first time in a very long time, it's a question of, will it be modified? Will there be a stair-stepped, faster sunsetting of that 30%? I think that's likely. So that's putting a little bit of pressure on, if you're thinking about doing solar and you've resisted for whatever reason, maybe now's the time to like, that 9,000 is a lot, right? You're going to be hard pressed to find a subsidy like that again.
Of course. Yeah.
Whether the state of California tries to do something on their own or not, $9,000 is a lot. So again, my personal opinion is I'm not sure, but I do think that there will be some legislation that will hit the floor of Congress and they'll vote on it. And my understanding is they only need 51 votes, right? The majority to make a change. And they have, the Republicans have 53 out of 100 seats. So if they wanted to change this, they could. There's reasons why maybe they shouldn't, right? That there is jobs that have been created in states that are run by Republicans, sure, right? So this isn't as easy to say like, yeah, of course, it's a bad use of money. I don't think it is. I think this has created a lot of jobs and it's helping energy in this country, which is one of the biggest topics. So do I think they should do it? No, but if they did do it, I wouldn't be surprised.
So for consumers watching, your opinion would be now is a good time and not wait till the end of the year, because I think the reality of this is the subsidy wouldn't go away mid-year, right? We're a month into 2025 and it's not going to be, okay, no more tax credit in 2025. Like,
I highly doubt that.
Things installed in 2025 are going to be eligible is our opinion. But if you wait until September of 2025
and our calendar's booked,
and people can't get you done by the end of the year, you could really be on the bubble. So it really is, now is the time to do it. There is currently a subsidy. You want to take advantage of it, do it now.
Absolutely. And the last one is just the utility, right? The utility is constantly raising the prices. And this is pretty easy to find, right? You can go to the CPUC website, and right there is all the forecasted rate changes. And SCE, which is the majority of our customers, Southern California Edison, they forecasted a 10.3% increase.
It's funny, they put all this right in front of your face. Like, but how many of us look at our electric bills? I don't really. I look at mine just to see how big of a solar credit I have.
Right.
But most people, I think, don't open their bill and look at it in its entirety. They're like, what do I owe? Pay what I owe. But they send this out in the bill and say, this is what we're proposing to raise your bill next year. And most people aren't aware of it. 10.3% is a lot, especially considering that historically they've been raising, what's the number? Something like 7 or greater percent.
We used to use 5%, but honestly, it's a low marker.
We've been underestimating.
It's closer to 8 or 10%. So here's another 10%, right? 10.3%. So if you've got a $800 bill, and I've got several people I'm talking to in our network right now with bills in that range, and you're like, I'm still not sure. 800 is now 880, right? It's becoming a bigger problem.
So runaway train, monopoly here.
And we've said this in every episode, I think. Do you trust the utility to have your best interest in mind?
Yes.
Absolutely not. You know what else happened this year? Yeah. You know what else happened this year? The wildfires. So is that going to hit your bill in 2025? I'm not sure. I don't know exactly how all that like works out timeline-wise.
I don't think the lawsuits for all the burned down houses are going to be settled in 2025. It's going to be ongoing.
But do you think your rates are going down in 2026? No. So in addition to what they're already forecasting, this is something in addition. So combine those four factors, right? The products, the financing, the subsidies, and the rate increases. You put those four things together, this is a really good time again to go solar because there's so much uncertainty after right now. After 2025, I think we're talking about everything going up again.
So the summary that I just did in my head of what you said there was we're looking at potentially increased cost in materials, increased cost in financing, and reduction of subsidies happening on the same timeline, potentially like late 2025 and beyond.
I'm not sure that's ever happened before.
That's a big deal.
Right. So now all of a sudden, we can sit here and preach and be like, oh yeah, there's, 6 to 7 year paybacks on systems. Everyone's like, haha, that's great. Still not interested yet. Well, now those are going to go away, right? Now they might go to, I'm speculating a longer timeline, 8-9 years, which is still better than the never payback period of a utility company. But why not have 6 to 7? Why not capitalize on the now when it's still a pretty good deal? So work with a contractor that knows what they're talking about. Have them explain these complicated, subjects to you. This is not easy to understand when we're getting into batteries and how your time of use works and how power is being stored and used later and net metering through whatever you want to, however you want to talk about this. It's complicated. Get in the weeds, stop avoiding it, and make a decision when you still have time, because this, I would feel very confident saying it's not going to get better from here. This is a moment in time where you can sign up for a project, save good money for you and your family before it goes up and gets less lucrative.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that solar is kind of a partisan thing. People are like, oh, that's, ew, I don't want that. Or yes, I absolutely want it. And I just don't understand why that would be a thing when the paybacks that you're talking about there, for me, that's not partisan. That's save my family money, invest in my family's future with this product that has an actualized return on investment, something that I can look at the numbers and go, this makes sense. This is going to help me get to more college savings for my kids, more the wedding funds, whatever the case is. I just don't know why people wouldn't do it. And then with the landscape that we're looking at, it's going to get worse. So now truly is the time to do it. And you could argue, oh, it's always the time. It's the time now. It's the time now. It's the time now because of this or that or that. But the future is darker for subsidies, interest rates, and prices for these products with tariffs. I think now is the time.
I agree.
Let's do it.
I have nothing else to add. That is, I mean, that's the point, right? That's what we're talking about. You're right. It's not partisan.
Yeah. It's save money for your family.
So if you haven't done solar, this might be the time for you. And as always, thanks for joining us for another episode of SpeakEasy with Eric and Cory, and we'll see you next time.